The United States hasn't raised its federal minimum wage in 4 years, and with it stuck at $7.25 an hour, even Republicans, at least some of them, think it's time to give low-wage Americans a raise. According to a new Gallup poll, 58% of Republicans support raising the minimum wage to $9 an hour. Democrats and independents are much more willing to support a bump in wages. They're at 91% and 76% respectively. The question, of course, is are we going to see a minimum wage hike anytime soon?
No, because Republicans in Congress have still been heavily opposed to that. In fact, John Boehner himself, the Speaker of the House, doesn't support increasing the minimum wage. One of their biggest concerns is also pegging it to inflation, even though actually, because that's based on purchasing power, I guess the value of the minimum wage has actually gone down over recent years because it's not currently pegged to inflation. So, it's going to be an uphill battle for Democrats who overwhelmingly support increasing the minimum wage. President Obama's support through his support behind $10.10 as the minimum wage.
Yes.
And what Republicans will often say is, it's already tough enough for young people to find jobs. They always put it on young people, not kind of recognizing that the majority of the country that's operating on minimum wage is not just the youth. We're not just talking about high schoolers who are looking for jobs outside of school. Of course, we're talking about a lot of low-income areas, urban areas too, where it's become a tremendous problem and people are living in poverty because the minimum wage is just unacceptably low.
We see a tweet coming in from Bernie Sanders, obviously the senator from Vermont, who says a job should lift workers out of poverty, not keep them in it.
Well, this is the exact problem, I think, with the argument that Republicans have made. I think that they are convinced that this has to do with, and this was what they'll tell you, I've asked them on the Hill before, that this has to do with worker skills and qualifications. But economists have looked at increasing the minimum wage, and they haven't observed that it would have any impact on whether workers are low-skilled or high-skilled and how they are, brought into these jobs. If anything, this is the only avenue out for people, is to recognize that 725?
725, yeah.
That they won't be lifted out of poverty if that remains, especially when 725 is not nearly worth the same that it was worth the last time.
Which is a fair point, but that same quote could be used to support what Republicans say, right? Which is that a minimum wage should lift you out of poverty. If you raise the minimum wage too much, it won't lift people out of poverty because it'll shrink the job market, it'll shrink the labor market. Small businesses that could afford to hire 4 employees can now only afford to hire 3. Jobs that could afford to be solvent between Obamacare and minimum wage now can't because they'll be cutting workers. I mean, there is an argument to be made, whether it's true or not, we can wrestle with.
Yeah.
But I mean, it at least needs to be put on the table. It's not as if Republicans simply don't want workers to make more money. They're actually worried about what it means.
Of course not. And actually, polling shows that the majority of Republicans in the country actually support an increase in the minimum wage. I think with lawmakers, a lot of this, as we know, has been politicized. If you actually sat down with a bunch of moderate Republicans, they'd probably look at ways to ensure that you aren't shrinking the workforce. Maybe it means incentivizing the process of raising the minimum wage a little bit for small businesses, for example, who might not be able to afford it. Offer them a tax credit, perhaps, if they're more open to that and can't bear the cost burden of hiring people at a higher wage.